right, we are at the Connection 2025. I'm here with Dr. Todd Cohan. Great to see you.
Happy to be here as always.
And we're going to talk about running a business. It's one thing I really like about this conference is it brings a lot of people that have a strong awareness for the business side of eye care. And you don't always get that in optometry. I think you get a lot of doctors who really like being doctors and they're really good at it, but they see the business side as a sort of a necessary evil.
hmm
You've identified yourself as a business owner, a CEO,
Right.
and an OD. And I think that's a good place to start. So, how has that mindset changed the way that you've built your practice?
I've always looked at myself as an entrepreneur who happens to be an eye doctor, is my field of focus. And so, in order to keep providing and growing, you have to steer the ship the right way and have the right people in the right seats in the bus. And if you don't look for profit centers to keep those revenue coming in consistently, you're just going to be a victim to your own circumstance. Well, all of us are bogged down with all the social media. Oh, optometry is burning like a car on fire, or insurance this, insurance this. Well, yes, that's true, but you can steer your own ship and find your own path to do so. And so I've always looked at my business like three pillars. I have my primary eye care, I have my myopia management, and I have my dry eye. And two of those three are insurance slash almost recession proof also, right? Big need, non-commoditized, and I don't want to be a victim to someone else taking my prescription, and that's the be all end all for my financial well-being and my staff's financial well-being. And so it's very important to look at your practice as a business and know your numbers. Funny story, when I started practicing 20 something years, 24 years ago, I was invited to the old SIBA Vision MBA Academy, and I was with this family practice that I was a young associate for. Family practice, 50, 60 years, they're in practice. So we're sitting there and I'm like, give me the information. At the time, there was the pillars of practice management. And I looked over to my right, and the doctor I'm working for is snoozing. He's snoozing like this. And I'm like, give me more, give me more. And these are huge metrics that I got. And I got those numbers. So I have a path for how to open my own practice one day, just based upon where I should keep everything in check. So having that business mindset, and of the 39,000 practitioners, unfortunately, the majority don't, right? They're successful despite themselves. And so I want to kind of chart my own path, create my own destiny, and provide for my staff and be able to take them to conferences like this every single year, because it's not a cheap investment when you're closing the office and flights and hotel, but this is what breeds loyalty with your staff. And when people leave, not for a dollar or two an hour, they leave because they're not being valued. And that's kind of how I take care of my staff, take care of my practice, and kind of how I want to chart my own path.
So, the conference that you were talking about, you said, give me more on the
Yes.
business side of things. What would you say to the doctor next to you who's falling asleep? Because there's a lot of doctors, if you looked around, that are probably falling asleep in that same class. They just don't enjoy the business side of it. Now, on one hand, we could argue maybe you shouldn't go into business if you don't enjoy the business. There's plenty of great opportunities to be an employed doctor.
hmm
Some doctors who don't enjoy the business find the whole thing daunting, and some are just miserable being in that position because they just don't run the business and it doesn't operate like it should. However, let's say to the doctors who already own a business,
hmm
but they don't really enjoy it. Is it a matter of delegating leadership, finding other people who could take those roles? Is it a matter of just saying, too bad, you got to do it? What advice would you
I
give to
would
that
say what
person?
motivates you, right? There's that book, The Different Languages of Love Language, right?
Hmm.
Not everyone's motivated by financial rewards. Some are rewarded by, how much time you want to take off or with your family. What's important to you? And let's figure out a path to create that, right? And so when it comes to managing your practice, find people that are smarter and better than you,
Hmm.
right? I mean, I just you read the books Surge after the Traction second part, and I'm the chief visionary officer. My operations manager is chief integration officer. There's so many things I don't touch anymore because I entrust someone who's much better at that skill set than I am. And it takes a lot less stress away from me, and I can grow the practice. But motivation is a key in a lot of people. And reps always come in and say, "Oh, Dr. Cohen, you're this," and I wish every doctor was. I said, "I'm not smarter than anybody. More driven, I'll give it to you.
Hmm.
I am definitely more driven, and I embrace change and I make things happen. And too many people are stuck in that trough. And so, you can keep complaining, but it's falling on deaf ears unless you can chart your own path and do something about it."
At today's keynote, Sharon Carter spoke, and she talked about training other leaders.
Yes.
And again, another area, whether you enjoy the business or not, as a business grows, you're going to have to delegate leadership to some degree, which is a necessity for you.
Yes.
I want to hear your experience with that and how you did that, but also to that doctor who maybe doesn't enjoy leadership, a reminder to them is they don't have to do everything. You have to have other people on your team. And Sharon was talking about how powerful that was to growth, to being able to continue growing.
Hmm.
What is your approach to training other leaders in your organization?
Training other leaders is creating accountability charts, creating like a loose EOS system where you have departmentalized. Even my technician, who's an amazing technician, but I know what her capabilities are and limited limits are also.
Hmm.
And so if we can kind of box her in and say, look, Janelle, I need you to do this and this and this, then she'll rise to it. But if I say do 4 other things, it's just going to fall on deaf ears. So you really have to empower those people and make accountability. It's not about financially hanging a carrot over their face. It's about having them be a valued member of the team. When we come back from IDOC, we take our whole staff and we regurgitate the information, and we have every one of those staff members present the information they learned in their classes to each other. So that creates leadership and a sense of ownership of that information and a go-to, right? Because then after the meeting, it's like, oh, what did you learn here? And they retouch on it. So developing leaders is very important. Like Sharon said this morning, she goes, if you want to go far, you got to surround yourself by a really big team. And that's the vision you have to have. And keeping your staff, empowering them, and also an open door policy is so important because everyone's going to fail, but you got to support them in their fail. You learn more about I think you said this on your
Hmm.
podcast, you'll learn more about your failures than you do with your accomplishments. So.
Yeah. Accountability, which you just mentioned, one of the best definitions of accountability I ever heard was put people in a position in which they know they're going to have to account for their performance on a later date. So you just gave an example of that, your staff coming to this meeting, going to courses, and sort of reporting back on that. How do you handle that approach in your practice, where a lot of times I see the failure to continue to grow as a lack of accountability? We have the ideas, we have the strategies, and we try to put them in place. But as you know, if there's not some accountability, things tend to go back to the way they were before.
Mhm.
How do you approach accountability in the
I
office?
think it's all about keeping it simple, right?
Mm.
KS says, keep it simple, stupid, right? So you have little breakdown. If you look at optometry as a business, there's so much to worry about. You've got the retail, you've got the cost of goods, you've got patient care, you've got insurance, you've got receivables. There's so many things that we do on a daily basis that you write the steps of how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. There's a lot of steps involved
Mhm.
in our practice, more than any other MD typically has, that aside from just patient clinical care. So you really have to break it down and make small bites. Okay, we have a pre-testing optical goals, we have our sales goals, and those different departments really helps the staff grasp it all, because otherwise you're just hitting them with a fire hose and they're just spinning like a roulette wheel, just going and going and going. They don't know
Mhm.
which way is up. So my operations manager is really great about having monthly check-ins. Hey, Steve, where are you at mentally? What can we do to make things better for you in your work environment? Do you feel overwhelmed? Those types of things, and we'll address at our monthly staff meetings as well. So the check-ins, the emotional check-ins, the asking of them on those one-on-ones is really important, because it lets them rise to a leadership level in their little department, right? And so they can be the master of their little
Mhm.
corner in the preschool room, and it makes them feel good, but it also, we trust them, right? And I think Sharon or Lynn were talking about trust is very important. And so conveying that trust and having that with your staff is wonderful. And as the doctor who's the CEO of the practice, having those different layers and having those people report to those heads of those departments is really important in taking away your headaches as an owner, but also letting you go far in the path that you want to pursue.
I think it was Google that did the study to find what are the top qualities of high performing teams, and the number one quality they came up with was a term, psychological safety,
Okay.
which really refers to what you're talking about. I might butcher the explanation a little bit, but it's basically just creating a culture, creating an environment where people feel comfortable coming to work and being able to be open, to be honest, to be candid, to share feedback, even if it's negative. And I'm hearing that word trust. They have to trust that they can come to you with that, and there's not going to be negative repercussions, as
Hmm.
long as it's done constructively. It's done
Hmm.
professionally, of course. But how do you encourage that within your team? And I'm not just talking about the other leaders who might feel more comfortable saying, Dr. Cohen,
Yeah.
this isn't working, but how do you handle that with the front desk receptionist and the technician, encouraging them? Because a lot of times, as we know, they're in the trenches.
Hmm.
They're on the front lines. They see things that we don't see. And if it's not solicited in some degree, a lot of times they're not going to say anything, which is bad for you because then
True.
you don't hear things that you really need to be hearing
Hmm.
if you're going to intervene.
Yeah, and to your point, you can be the best doctor in the world and do cartwheels for patients, but if they have a terrible experience with the staff, they're gone,
Hmm.
right? They're gone in customer service. And so I'll take this example. So I have a new employee. She's been with me for about 9 months, and we took her here to IDOC today. And she's 21 years old, really young, but she came from a practice not too far away. But it was, she lost her way. It got bought by private equity, and she was so unhappy, not being heard, not being valued, the whole kind of gray cloud over the staff. And so, we brought her in, empowered her. We gave her little tasks to do, and we gave her really great. Way to go! That's terrific, and you're really an asset to the team. And she's just growing like crazy. And anytime we hear something from a patient, we give it back to her. Those little things make them kind of walk a little taller and give them confidence. Coming from a practice that she kind of felt like she was a doormat, right?
Hmm.
And so those types of things, whether it's the front desk people hearing things, but it's really important. And when we bonus, Steve, we don't bonus individual staff members. We bonus the whole team because from the person, we'll use virtual assistants for our phone calls, but the person welcoming the person to the pre-tester, to the technician, to the optical staff, it's all a team approach, and those are the team goals that we have, and everyone plays a quite a role in that. But yeah, to your point, it's really important that they all feel heard and listened to, and being able to come in because a boiling pot can boil over
Hmm.
really quickly
Yeah.
if it's not heard of, and then they're going to leave, and then you're back to square one again, finding
Yeah.
place. Yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned before the three pillars. So let's go back to that
Mhm.
for a moment. You mentioned three pillars of your practice being primary care, dry eye, and myopia
Mhm.
management.
Mhm.
And I'm curious how you balance those. Do you treat those under one umbrella? Do you treat them as three separate units? For maybe a practice that wants to get into specialty care, but feel it's going to be too big of a
Mhm.
disruption to the traditional eye care, how do you balance those three
So
pillars?
we look at metrics, we look at conversions, we look at the amount of patients we saw, the amount of ocular surface exams that come from the comprehensive eye exams. I mean, a lot of people kind of, are negative on vision insurances, but believe it or not, the two ones we take, it brings in people in the door, right? Yes, we get a lot of referrals and people find us on the Facebook mom groups and things,
Hmm.
but those people are transitioned into the higher level of care that we provide. So they're the best time advertising. It brings them in. Adam Schmela says sometimes it's a marketing expense, and it truly is. But when it comes to those pillars, we look at how much revenue are those bringing in. And the nice thing about it is it's cash free for service. It's unique. I love the fact that it's unique. Yes, it's amazing. It's insurance proof. But the fact that it's unique, if someone doesn't come to me once a year saying, "Oh, there's something new," whether it's a electronic near card
Hmm.
or something new in the office, I don't feel like I'm doing a good job. And so those unique things, like we're early adopters, whether it comes to dry eye, like we did 9 or 10 years ago, and myopia management, but you look at those pillars, how much revenue they're bringing in. But as Nathan Hayes always says, the revenue per patient is the quality of the care you're giving. And so when it comes to these young associates, and they want, what have you done for me yesterday?
Hmm.
We're looking at the reason why we're doing all these things and have this process is to have that high level of care in our practice. And if people don't appreciate it, then they can go down the street to a commercial location. But we want to create as many A and B level patients as we possibly can. But those pillars are really important because that's what accelerates our practice. I mean, our practice continues to grow by double digits annually because of those pillars, right? Those are huge referral sources for patients.
Continue on that theme of if they're not happy with us, they can go somewhere else down the road
Yeah.
because I think it's in stark contrast to a lot of offices that they want to be everything to everybody,
Hmm.
but the entire experience ends up getting diluted,
Yes.
right?
And
So you've got a lot of people they're complaining about who aren't high value patients to the practice,
right.
but I I'm aligned with your approach. You've got to get comfortable if you're going to take a stand on what our brand is and what we stand for, that we're okay, that not everybody's our ideal patient,
Hmm.
and we're okay when someone decides we're not the best fit for them. And if everybody was your fit, you might not have a brand, right? You
Right.
might not have a differentiator.
Right.
Speak to
Yeah.
that a little bit
So
more.
it's a great point, and this actually came up in our study group, which is another commercial for coming to iDoc Connection every year, because we're talking about it. And one doctor in North Carolina was saying, he's like, you know what, we did a study and we found a correlation for people that aren't willing to pay out of pocket for retinal photos. They're all taking their prescriptions,
Oh,
and so it's interesting because 1 out of 10 you might have somebody buy an expensive Tom Ford frame or something, but by and large, those patients aren't valuing your investment in technology and your level of service. And so, to be honest with you, Steve, this is what I tell patients, and this is what my associates and now tell patients. Say, look, Steve, I don't care about your prescription. I care about the health of your eyes. If you're not willing to allow us to practice at the highest level, and we've invested in this technology to provide a better eye care for your comprehensive exam today, then I'm happy to give you names of places down the street, because by and large, that is not the quality of patient. There's no way, if someone's not going to pay $39 or $49 on whatever your photo
mhm.
is, they're not going to be signing their kid up for myopia management. They're not going to be doing the dry eye stuff. They're not, and it's not that we want to write them off, because it's not about how much dollars you spend in our practice. It's how do you value our expertise and our clinical knowledge, right? To that point, I had a patient years ago say, well, you build my insurance for 100 and some odd dollars. You spend 5 minutes with me. And I used the line I learned from somebody else and said, I could have spent 45 minutes with you and gotten you the same result,
Mhm.
or because of my 24 years of practice, I was doing 5 minutes. What would you rather have, right?
Right.
Patients don't realize that your expertise comes with your clinical experience, and that's what that they are coming to you for. So,
A tech asked me once back when I was practicing, and he didn't mean to be rude, but he said, "How can you charge so much when you only spend a little bit of time?" And he wasn't trying to be rude or
right,
disrespectful.
right.
He had just a comment. I said, "Well," I go, "the reason it takes me 5 minutes is because I went through so much school. If it took me 45 minutes to
Uh-huh.
diagnose and treat a red
Yeah.
eye,
Uh-huh.
I need to go back to school,
Right,
right?" So
right.
yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
Um, talk to me about your marketing, because when we
Okay.
talk about differentiation and not being everything to everybody
hmm
and really leaning into your brand,
hmm
what do you do for marketing?
So we do like a typical refer a friend. We hand out postcards, business cards at the end of the exam. The best word of mouth is for you to leave us a Google review, or tell your friends about us. We have a couple of digital marketing solutions that really help capture the follow through with our dry eye, with our myopia management. The patients take a QR code, sends them the information that really helps drip marketing, which is really important. Our website, we have separate websites for our dry eye center, which is amazing, the SEO we get with that, because
Mhm,
the average patient's looking going to 3.2 offices before they
mhm,
find the right dry eye doctor. But in terms of myopia management, it's those types of things. We'll incentivize patients to refer them, their friends and colleagues, for those types of things. But that's the main thing. I mean, the Facebook moms groups are always a great thing. We don't really do that many print things per se. We don't do mailers like we used to. It was funny, years ago, we did these postcards that you know, we tried it out and said, oh, 30% off your eyewear purchase. Well, we hardly got any redemption. But the next time we did it, was let's try $100. And we got tenfold redemption on those, because people are the fear of loss
yeah.
is more important. 30% is way more than $100 on a pair of progressives, but the $100. So we used to do those hard plastic postcards for a while. So there's still a place these days for some prints things. But that's the far extent of it. Mostly it's all SEO
Mhm.
and things. And my two practices, Steve, are in medical buildings. Right. So
Okay.
there's no, aside from saying, XYZ Medical Center,
Mhm,
there's no signs on the main thoroughfares at all. But
mhm,
yet we grow every year, and our people find us, right?
mhm,
So it's not the oh, you got to be AAA plumbing in order to
mhm.
find you in the yellow pages back in the day. But yeah, that's the extent of our marketing, is all digital and Facebook things, and we work with physicians. It's so hard to get interpersonal doctor relation. These MDs are spending all day long just to catch their breath, and with lower reimbursements and more
Mm,
patients, it's so hard to inundate. Even my own pediatrician and my own dermatologist, it's hard to get referrals.
mhm.
So yes, it's great, but those types of things are our mainstays.
You used some language earlier that sounded like traction.
Uh-huh.
Is that something you've implemented in your practice?
I want to work with a consultant to do the full traction. We have a very loose
Hmm.
helicopter view
Hmm.
traction in our office right now, but I want to implement it. The timing wasn't right with acquiring the second practice, but
Hmm.
I'm going to work with somebody to kind of implement in full step. Somebody in our study group had it, and they've got multiple offices, and he goes, I would not think twice about doing it again. He goes, it was amazing. It's changed our whole mindset, and had some staff rise up and some kind of fall off because they couldn't follow the protocols, but it makes everybody work really well together. So something that loosely, and I attended another conference, and positioning your practice down the road, we got to think of ourselves as any other business, and most of us don't. Whether you make tires or roofing materials, you have to have processes in place. If you ever want to, whenever your exit strategy may be, you want to have a guidebook for someone else, albeit ABC company, to come in and buy your practice or buy this or that. They want to know how the sausage is made. And if you just are loosey goosey and don't have systems in place, you're not going to get the top value for your practice, because you have to have an organizational structure.
Hmm.
And that's one of my main motivators.
Hmm.
Not that I'm thinking about retirement right now, but one of my main motivators to kind of help that flow of patients. So,
And you, on the system side,
yep,
it's allows you to not have to be there all the time.
100%.
One thing I've always admire is how franchises do. And I know most independent practices, for obvious reasons, don't aspire
Mm-hmm.
to be a franchise
Mm-hmm.
because we want independence, right?
Mm-hmm.
We want to be able to innovate and
Yep.
change. And a franchise is a pretty
Yep.
rigid model, but they usually do systems pretty good. It's what allows them to build hundreds of
Mm-hmm.
locations and set up. They usually operate lean. They operate very
Yep.
systematically. Is that something? And I know you said you haven't gone full in
Right.
on
Mm-hmm.
traction. And for those
Yep.
who are not familiar, I won't go into the
Yep.
deeds or into the weeds on that, but it's based on a book, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then it's a
Yeah.
system and you can
System and
implement it.
stuff. Huh?
But how have you approached that in your office, building up consistent
So
systems?
consistency, it starts with pre-testing, Steve. I gave a lecture a couple years ago, the power of pre-testing, and that
Hmm.
sets the guideline to position your practice as a medical-based practice, right? Non-commoditized, again, we keep talking about. So if the power of pre-testing, if we're doing all the tests correctly, that will automatically guide the patient through the journey, which will then set up further follow-up care, which will be able to bill to the medical insurance. If we found something medical, then it'll transition to the optical. I mean, I was on my ski trip last week, and I get the day sheets at the end of the day. I'm like, we had 2 killer days in both offices, and I was sitting there on the ski slope. So that process really kind of helps a lot in terms of the systems in place. And my associates have kind of taken that as well, and the staff knows how it works as well. So those are important things to have in place in terms of your production
Hmm.
and your profitability mainly too.
Hmm.
So,
How do you communicate the value of what you do to patients? So
mhm.
you've got those patients who come in with the expectation that they're just going to use their insurance. There's a
Yep,
$10 copay.
yep,
And I think those are the patients, maybe they're not the best fit for your office,
mhm.
and that's fine. They can go, like
Yeah,
you said, up the road.
uh-huh,
You're not trying to be all things to all
uh-huh.
people, but how do you communicate the value? Because I think a lot of doctors struggle with that. They're like,
Yep,
okay, we know what we want to be. We want to be this high-end optical. We want to be a medical practice.
mhm.
We want to do specialty, but yet you've got to deal with patients coming in who have a different mindset. They may have where can I get my glasses the cheapest? It's not that they can't be. Um, some of them just don't know. So I'm
Right,
just curious, what does that conversation
right.
sound like when patients call, when they come into the
Mhm.
office? How do you communicate the value to
Well, our
them?
call center sets the expectation that bare minimum you're doing retinal photos for a more comprehensive eye exam experience.
Hmm.
Our pre-testers are all scripted. In fact, I recorded them all and presented it a couple of years, and they're all scripted to say, all right, Steve, this is the OCT. This looks at the layers of the retina. We can catch high blood, whatever, this
Hmm.
ABC early. And so it's conveying to the patient what we're doing and why we're doing it. And the first thing that patient does is when they come in the exam room is I say, hey, Steve, how are the kids? How's Johnny in baseball? Then I'm like, this is the retinal picture. Let's take a look at how it changed last year. This is the retinal scan. This finds glaucoma 7 years earlier. This is this. So it kind of takes away, I'm looking as a sales approach
Hmm.
as much as I am a healthcare approach. It takes away buyer's remorse, right?
Hmm.
They know the value. They are shown the value and the reason why. That's why very few patients say, I don't want that test next year. They don't really say that.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so we're doing, macular pigment, visual fields, OZTs, photos, myopography on most of our comprehensive eye exams, just as a point of care, right?
Hmm.
And so that's the value patients have. Now, it's very hard. When my old practice I used to work at as an associate, hey, Steve, here's your red eye, $75. We'll cover the follow-up for you.
Hmm.
I'm like, why are you being the nice guy? The ophthalmologist down the street, you walk in that door, cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. So you have to value your service. And so there's a big shift in medical model for practices that haven't done it, because Sally's used to just paying a small little copay or
Hmm.
not being anything billed to the medical insurance. Now the staff knows the verbiage, and they say, look, if there's a medical, people, some can come from other offices. Why do you need my medical insurance card? All you need is my iMed card or something. Well, no, because if the doctor finds something medical, that's a medical code. It's all in the verbiage and the message. If you have high blood pressure, that's a retinal image that we can use for the medical, or whatever the case may be.
Hmm.
Or if you have allergies you're coming in, that's a medical code. Your eye insurance doesn't cover that. Your eye insurance covers the contacts or glasses portion of the exam. And so now they've conveyed. But again, new patients, or even people that are not even used to paying a contact lens fitting fee, it's like,
Hmm.
oh, our peers aren't charging appropriately. And it's really frustrating, but it's a constant battle. And you don't want to be too salesy. You don't want to ever do that, but you want to convey the passion, the investment you've made, and the quality of care, because that they can't get every single place up the
Hmm.
street. So
Well, I like what you said about the process of it's almost like building the value
yep,
the minute they walk in the
yep,
door, and maybe even on the phone call.
mm-hmm.
So you hear that a lot in the optical, like people get out there and they don't want to pay for anything else. But has anything happened in that journey prior to that that built the value in the patient's mind, right? And it's the same thing when somebody walks in,
Right.
when they get to the point, if they don't understand it, if it hasn't been explained, if it hasn't been communicated to them in any way, shape, or form, nobody set an expectation,
Mm-hmm.
then yeah, I'd be asking the same questions as a consumer.
Sure.
Why am I paying for this?
Mm-hmm.
And so if you get to that point in the process, it probably should have been explained. So I like
Yeah.
the approach, and I think more doctors should probably do that. Is
Yeah.
look at you said I know doctors hate the word selling, but you're sort of selling yourself. You're
Mm-hmm.
selling your abilities.
Mm-hmm.
You're selling your competency when people walk through the door.
Exactly.
Just a few more things, Todd. I'm curious if you could expand on your KPI. You mentioned KPIs
Yep.
before, so I
Yep.
might be asking you to repeat yourself, but I meant to circle back to that. What are some of the key numbers that you track that
Sure.
lets you know that you're staying on
Sure.
course?
So we look at our, obviously square one, how many exams came in that month, new patient versus established patient values. We look at our pre-testing. We look
Hmm.
at the conversion rate of our pre-testing, our eye wellness package, and things like that. We look at our annual supply rate for our contact lenses. We look at our multiple pairs. We look at, and the Edge helps a lot with this. We look at on the back end. Obviously, I'm looking at my
Hmm.
cost of goods and all those types of things. But for the staff's perspective, we're looking at multiple pairs, percentage of annual supplies, our exam only rate. This is something we took initiative in December and said, look, if patients are walking out, why are they walking out, right? Something isn't being
Hmm.
conveyed, and we have the checkbox of why they're leaving. It's because I got to bring my spouse in, or I got to run to Johnny's football game, I'll come back. But just like any sales process, if someone says, okay, you got to run to take your kid to baseball, I understand. Let's make an appointment for you to pick out glasses. We want to be able to educate you and fit you properly. Those types of things. One of my friends, actually talking about optical, he has a clear lucite box in his optical, just with like donated frames and things. So, and he put failed online glasses orders, and so patients see that. But conveying to patients and have different price points is really important in the optical to help with the conversion. So exam only rate is something, because that has an immediate impact. We pre-appoint, obviously, and our fill rate is important. And then obviously, those types of sale metrics are the things that really can turn the bus really quickly.
Hmm. What advice would you give to someone who wants to make that shift from more of what we might call a general model,
Uh-huh.
just more of that traditional eye
Mm-hmm.
care, into a more specialized, differentiated brand?
Uh-huh. So look at your patient base and kind of think about what the potential is, and maybe that should kind of slap you in the face.
Hmm.
So if you're seeing your smaller practice, you're seeing 100 exams a month, 33% of those have dry eye on the low end, right?
Hmm.
And 10% of those people convert to a dry eye evaluation. Just do the math. I mean, you could bring so much revenue in with your existing patient base without spending a dollar, just talking about dry eye right now, a dollar on any postcards or website, SEO optimization, charges or Google AdWords. So look at what you want to accomplish and build. All too often, everyone's trying to sell you the shiny box, but that box doesn't have an implementation plan along with it.
Mhm.
And the sales reps are happy just to check on their box for my year 8 numbers. And so have a plan in place, get your staff on board. Those are the things that's going to drive, whether it's myopia management or low vision or dry eye, those things will drive the revenue and increase, work smarter, not harder. I would rather, I've known lots of practices by me that they're spinning all day long and they're seeing 30 patients a day, but their average revenue is a third of what mine is. I'm pretty darn happy. I'm doing more than they are on a daily basis in collections, and I'm seeing a third of the patients because of the high quality care and high touch that we have. And it's not like my office isn't, yes, we have all the high end optical, but we don't have the highest of high. We're not talking about, $2,000 frames, and we convert the people that we can convert. But 2/3 of our revenue, our practice is non-optical based. So yes, I want you to appreciate my quality. Yes, I want you to purchase eyewear from us because we can give you certain things that the big boxes can't. But those, it doesn't bother me. It's not going to hit me below the kneecaps that I can't turn the lights on tomorrow morning because we don't have that income coming in.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was great. So you, again, we're at the Connection, and you're getting ready to go speak in
Yes.
a few minutes here. What are you talking about?
I'm talking about creating and sustaining a financially successful dry eye practice.
Okay.
And help our colleagues and staff alike to get on board and make things happen.
Awesome, Todd.
Yep.
Thanks so much for sitting in with us.
Of course.
Always valuable. And we'll wrap it up there. But this is Steve Vargo, Dr. Todd Cohan. And if you want more information about iDoc, you can check us out online at www. I don't actually have to say that part, right? I think most people know idoc.net. That's idoc.net. We're having a blast here at the Connection in Austin, Texas. So we'll see you on the next episode.